Hi, this is Craig Lane with our video blog for week 10 in 2013. We're going to be talking today about the immune system acting as a digestive system, where our immune system actually starts to digest our body, and how this fits in with eating a bit more raw food. I don't want to be considered like a raw food extremist, nor should I think other people should be extreme in anything. But since raw foods and fresh foods tie in with a lot of good health, these are some of the most basic ideas that we can use in health. So let's talk about digestion and what happens when we digest food. When we eat food, the first thing we do is we chew. And ideally we chew our food well. That's the first and most important marker in health, is that if we do not chew our food, a couple of things happen. Think about this as a piece of food, and you wanted to chew it up and annihilate it basically into its constituent parts. If we do not do so, the stomach is not going to do that for us, nor will the intestines, because they are fairly delicate creatures, we could say. And imagine trying to chew with your tongue, and that's kind of where you get an idea of what's going on in your intestines. So ideally what we do is we chew our food well, and there's even a saying in the old macrobiotic tradition, which I studied, that those who are sick should chew their food 100 times, or 250 times, or 300 times. And when we do that, and when we eat at least 51% raw, there were men who used to study this, men and women, and what they determined was that if we eat 51% of our food raw, we tend not to have an immune reaction to our food. So in other words, if most of our digestive system is around here in the gut, so most of our immune system lines our gut, then we ideally want that system to not be reactive. So if we don't break down our food up here, it's going to take more energy to digest it down below, and if it's not completely, if all the protein molecules aren't broken down to their constituent amino acids, if the fat isn't broken down to fatty acids and glycerol, if the carbohydrates aren't broken down to simple sugars, then ultimately something can get absorbed into the body that, in other words, the word leaky gut, can cause an immune reaction. And our immune system does not want foreign proteins, incomplete molecules getting absorbed into circulation. So when our immune system reacts, i.e. to too much cooked food, we begin to have inflammation. So what we really ideally want to do is eat a bit more raw. Like in the wintertime, there may not be much of an option, but a lot of things that the raw foodists don't talk about, especially the raw food vegans, are that we can have raw meat, we can have raw dairy, we can have raw cheese, we can have fermented foods that will last in the cold climate in the middle of the winter. We can even put a sprouting jar in our windowsill and have fresh sprouts even on the coldest of days because we're inside. And this is my raw cream tea here. So we can enjoy still having hot food, but not necessarily 100% hot food that doesn't have some raw in with it. So in the wintertime, let's consider that, because the first excuse I hear, and I think that's a great thing to do, is have more cooked food, is as soon as we can eat a bit more raw than we do. And even if it's just a raw garnish, it's better than nothing at all. Or we have some enzymes with our food. So ideally we don't want, again, we don't want our body acting as a digestive system. So our immune system acting as like our digestive system. Because what happens is our immune system will start to digest our tissues if there's too much inflammation. That's going to be part of a separate video blog. But today it's really just an alert that something that I haven't spent much time on, and that's our minerals and our protein are best absorbed in a raw form too. And the best example of this is raw milk. Calcium in raw milk is much more assimilatable than the calcium in cooked or pasteurized milk. Same with the protein. And guess what? A third of our bone matrix is made of protein. So what we want to make sure of is that we're eating enough raw protein foods that isn't cooked or overcooked, so that we get better bone and connective tissue formation, we get better healthy new tissue, and we also get better neurotransmitter support. So, and again, we also want more raw fats in our diet. So if we're going to eat more fat, we want to make sure that we're getting raw butter, or at least cultured butter. that especially our polyunsaturated fats are not heated in any way, shape, or form. So when we have a cooked oil, for example, or a stale oil, that can be rancidity, and that can cause free radical damage. Plus the fact that a lot of our cell membranes, or a lot of them, are composed of fatty acids and cholesterol. So if we have too much bad fat being made into our cell membranes, then our cell membranes are not going to function properly, i.e. waste can't get out of the cell and nutrients can't get in. It's a pretty important thing. And one of the things that I'm noting in my research over the last few months is that the flour millers over 100 years ago were targeting this, and this also ties in with protein because wheat is a very high protein grain. And so we want to make sure we're flagging the fact that the men of over 100 years ago, back into the 40s and 50s, were talking about this, like, why are we seeing the cancer rates rising? Why are we seeing degenerative disease and heart disease rising? Their opinion was that the germ oils, or the wheat germ oil in the germ of the whole grain, or the oat bran, or the barley, or the rye, or whatever, once you grind a grain to its constituent flour, think about this is a grain here, this end of the thumb, and you can grind it into a million little pieces. Each of those millions of little pieces are more exposed to oxygen and light and heat, which are the oil's worst enemy, and that causes rancidification of the oil. And for those of you like myself, who I used to eat a lot of flour foods, including almond flour, coconut flour, those on the gluten-free diet, you're still being subjected to rancidity of these oils, these very delicate oils, and it's not spoken of much, and it's an insight I think that many of you should heed if you want to attain higher health, because it's going to have day in, day out inflammation. Even if one thing I hear from clients a lot is like, oh, I only have grain or flour products maybe once or twice a month. Well, think about you're rebuilding your house, and you start to rebuild your house and then you light it on fire once a month or twice a month. You're going to have to repair that damage, and that's not quite accurate, but it does cause inflammation. And if you're helping something get fixed in the gut, this delicate tissue in here, and you keep biting your lip, then it's going to cause it to become inflamed, and the body's going to have to repair that and deal with the inflammation. So the goal is not to not have flour foods, but to have fresh ground flour foods. So the first step would be to buy your flours, or your flour, wheat flour, rice flour, whatever, in a sealed package. The next step is to call up the manufacturer and ask them how and when that was ground. And a better step yet is to grind your own flour fresh. And I know that seems extreme, but it's just some of the things that people used to do, and we take for granted these days. You can go off to the store and buy your rancid wheat germ, or your rancid wheat flour, or your rancid coconut flour, or your rancid almond flour, and thinking that it's fresh. And that's why we need to sweeten stuff so much. I mean, just make yourself some natural sourdough bread from stale wheat flour, i.e. from the bulk bin, and then grind your own. It's something that we noted back 18 years ago when I opened a natural food restaurant, was that we always ground our flour fresh, and the bread rose more and was fluffier, and it just tasted better. And they used to talk about this way back when, in the times of yore, back over 100 years ago. Why does bread taste so bad? And that's because it was made from rancid cereal grains, and that's one of the reasons why white flour was developed, was actually because of the flavor. So ponder those ideas, and then that's how protein fits in too, is we want to have fresh protein foods, not overcooked, not stale. And this is why people have teeth problems and cavities and bone degeneration, and you just don't hear about this much because people talk about calcium this and mineral that. Well, they're not getting the right form of calcium and minerals, nor are they getting the right form of protein. So if your bone is 1/3 protein, 1/3 mineral, and 1/3 water, rough approximation, that's not exact, then think about it. You're getting low quality protein and low quality minerals in your body. It's no wonder things break down. If they made airplanes out of the spare parts that we put in our body, i.e. poor quality food, then planes would be falling out of the sky. So keep that in mind, that your flours, and that also applies to flax seeds, ground chia seeds, these super polyunsaturated fats, they really need to be fresh. And Alice Waters, when she developed her restaurant, Chez Panisse, back in Berkeley, all back in the day, many, many years ago, that was her first premise, was fresh foods and local foods. And local foods usually are fresh foods. So we're leading a liver cleanse this week at Health Alchemy. The first meeting is this Sunday, and attendance is optional because we're doing it on the web also. Just one thing to think about is getting some of this inflammation down, getting your gut cleaned out and your digestive system cleared out so that the liver can function properly and do things that it really should be doing, and not dealing with the body's inflammation and day-to-day diet choices. So we don't want to should people to death, but we also need to get the word out that, you know, we can have a healthier body. And it's just these little tiny tips, and that's why we do these little video blogs. So Craig Lane signing out. Next week we'll be talking about the immune system acting as a digestive with a lot more detail. And we're also going to be sending out a newsletter. So if you're not on my newsletter list, go to my website, healthalchemy.com, HealthAlchemy, healthalchemy.com. Get on our newsletter list and go to my Facebook page, Health Alchemy Nutrition, or my page, Craig Lane, on Facebook. And please join our cleanse. There's still time. Even if you don't sign up by Sunday, the cleanse doesn't technically start until March 24th or 25th, depending on what day is easier for you to start. So we're just looking to get some assessment done this Sunday and helping those who have too much of their immune system acting as a digestive system. When I say this, the sneak preview for next week is, think about autoimmune. And we spoke briefly of this in a previous video blog about growth factors versus tearing down factors. So when the immune system is acting like a digestive system in the body's tissues, which has too much autoimmune, too much tearing down, and not enough growth. So it's too much of this, not enough of this. Craig Lane signing off, Health Alchemy video blog. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.